Tonight on Talking Politics, a look at the mysterious Boston Policy Institute, which came from nowhere to become a big player in local politics. Plus, Boston University grad workers are on strike. I'll speak with one union member as they enter their 7th week of work stoppage. But first, since pro-Palestinian encampments started going up on college campuses across the country, many student protesters have been wary of the media, and not without reason. Historically, news coverage of protests generally has tended to be more sensational and simplified than comprehensive and nuanced. Now, several weeks into this round of protests, how are we, the media, doing? I'm joined now by Dan Lothian, executive producer of The World, produced here at GBH, and Lila Alphonse, New Hampshire and Rhode Island editor for the Boston Globe and former managing editor of U.S. News and World Report. Lila, let me start with you. Do you think when it comes to the volume of protest coverage that we are getting it right in terms of the amount? Are we covering it appropriately? Are we not covering them enough? Or are we maybe covering them a little bit too much?
I think that's actually a really tough question. So it depends on where you're looking. The media is not a monolith, so I think the way it's being treated digitally and in print is different from what you're seeing on TV. I think that the media in general, though, is inherently reactive in situations like this. So if it's big and loud and messy, it's going to get airtime, it's going to get pixels and ink. But I think overall we're paying attention, and that's really the most important part. I think it's very easy for people to dismiss encampments because they're tired of what's going on. They don't really understand the nuances of the topic that's being protested. They're confused seeing who's making up these protests. So I think overall the media needs to keep their eye on what's going on and keep explaining things.
We'll get into some of the points that you mentioned a little bit more momentarily. Dan, what's your take on the amount of coverage for starters?
I do think, again, I agree with you that it is, depending on where you consume your news, you could argue that it's being overcovered or undercovered. It is important that this story is being told. So I think, to your point, any time that you can shine the light on young people getting engaged in a not only just the political process, but a global story and an issue, I think that's a good thing. Where I do think you might argue that it's being overcovered and then covered perhaps with the wrong view is across social media. And the reason for that is that people want to share the people getting shoved against something, being hit by something, chased away from something, police moving in with a line. And so those things are often shared without context. There's one quick line, "Can you believe this happened?" And then that is, depending on what view and what side you're taking on this, that is what is shared. And I follow a lot of different news sites and I follow a lot of different people on Instagram. And that is where I notice that you see just a lot of coverage that isn't providing the kind of context, or you have to go digging somewhere to find the context for it.
If you want it.
If you want it, but most people don't. And so this becomes the narrative that it's not so much about the message, but it's about the students against a university or students against the police.
There's a journalism professor at Michigan State who we had on Greater Boston earlier this week named Danielle Brown, and she argues that coverage of protests tends to focus too much on spectacle and confrontation and not enough specifically on the causes and grievances that are animating the protesters themselves. Do you think that's a fair critique?
I think that is fair. I agree with it. I was teaching a class not covering these kinds of protests, but just protests in general. And I said, the problem is we run into a protest, or some sort of activity on the street. We want to get as close to the action, and then you start running from that action because tear gas is being thrown or whatever it is, and then you become the story. I saw something recently where there was an anchor saying, "Okay, are you safe?" And then, if you feel at any moment you're not safe, raise your hand. I'm not really sure what that would have done, but you're putting yourself in, right. So you then become the story. And what I have said in the classroom, speaking with students in the past, is that you need to be covering a protest before the protest happens. So we know these things are going to happen. You want to talk to people about the issues, right? You want to talk to more than just the police about what is expected to happen there, to really get the voices that understand what's happening, not just the emotional reaction in that moment.
You know, and that's another point that I know Danielle Brown made in this piece that she wrote recently, is that there's a long run-up in which you can be doing exactly that kind of reporting, talking to people in advance, talking about what's motivating them, but that the media just quantitatively simply waits until it reaches a crisis point. Lila, there's been some criticism of the press for accepting the narrative that's been put forth by a lot of people, including New York Mayor Eric Adams, that the protesters are being driven by quote-unquote outside, or the protests are being driven by quote-unquote outside agitators. Let's take a look at a couple examples and then come back and talk about that.
Tell us about this change.
Yeah, so when we entered Hamilton Hall, this is not what students bring to school. Okay, this is what professionals bring to campuses and universities. These are heavy industrial chains that were locked with bike locks, and this is what we encountered on every door inside of Hamilton Hall.
I was at UCLA yesterday. They there have, 48,000 students, and again, we're talking about a couple hundred. So less than 1%.
And how many of them are actually students?
A lot of them are not students, so they conceal their faces entirely, so you can't even tell who's an outside agitator and who's an actual student. It
was subsequently noted on Twitter, now X, that in fact that chain that students allegedly would not bring onto campus, it's a bike lock that's available at a discount.
I was going to say, you can also buy chain at any hardware store.
Yeah.
And bike locks are also easily available.
So two related questions for you. Do you think it matters if non-students are participating in these campus-based protests? And if so, what should we call them?
Two good questions there. I think it does matter. I think that sometimes we focus on that because it's easy. We tend to think of college students as kids. They're not. They're adults. Graduate students are even older than freshmen and sophomores. They are fully capable of deciding to do things like this and executing on their plans. But I think that focusing on outside agitators allows us as parents, as journalists, to feel like our good kids would never do something like this. And it puts some distance between what's going on. It makes it easier to ignore consequences. I think it's important to note when there are outside agitators, but I also think that it's important to note that just in the clip you just showed, they attributed a lot of what's going on to outside agitators, then acknowledge that they can't tell who's who.
Right.
So what's their proof when they're talking about the sheer numbers? So I do think it's important to note. I think it would be good if we could figure out what organizations are supporting things. There are national organizations. Most organizations on campuses are part of a national organization of some part. So it's not unusual that outsiders, non-students would be involved, but I don't think it's right to assign all of the responsibility for what's happening and therefore all of the consequence to outsiders.
Well, I know it's something that many protesters take issue with too, because it suggests that they don't have agency and are not, in fact, passionate about the cause that's being covered. Do you have a problem with the term outside agitators? Because I know historically it's often been used to delegitimize people who are working for social change. I think Martin Luther King was labeled an outside agitator, at least in some contexts.
I have a problem with terms, period, right? I think anytime we fall into collectively using certain terms when we're covering certain kinds of stories, or we fall into parroting what we are told by law enforcement officials or other officials as well, then that's where we get into trouble. And so I think that the best way to avoid any of these issues around terms is just call it what it is, right? If people are protesting, it's protesters. If half of them are not, students and half of them are other people, you say half are students and half are X, right?
And I guess provide as much information as you can about the other people who are not students.
Exactly. You run into trouble anytime you start attaching labels, because protests are never clean. It's never 100% of anything, right? And so you really just need to be very specific with what you are seeing and what you are calling it, as opposed to this using a name, outside agitators, or some other phrase. The other point I'd like to make is that, I think all of us as reporters have been covering protests since day one. I don't know that I've ever covered a protest where everybody there was with the group, at least once something gets big. If it's in a high school and they're protesting about teachers, maybe it's just all high school students on campus. But any major protest that happens, you always get a lot of other people who join. Sometimes it's because they believe in what you're doing and they want to support it, and other times they want to use the spotlight of that moment to get attention for something else. And so I don't think this is unusual. And so that's why, knowing that, with that knowledge, news organizations need to be smarter in the labels that they use around coverage of a story like this.
I think agitators is particularly inflammatory because it implies that they're just out there stirring the pot, that they're just wrecking things for the sake of wrecking things. They're just trying to get people angry.
Yep.
And
that's an excellent point, as opposed to having a genuine conviction that they're
exactly.
voicing.
And I think that the people who are protesting now, students and community members and organizers, all have concerns that they are trying to air.
I want to ask you both, before we wrap up, about a poll that came out this week from Axios. They polled college students nationwide. They asked them about 9 different topics and how concerned they were about those topics. One of them was the conflict currently going on between Israel and Hamas, and that ranked at the bottom of the 9 topics that the students were asked about. That poll also found that just 8% of college students had participated in any type of protest, whether it was pro-Palestinian, pro-Israeli, something else. Might those numbers suggest that we pull back a bit moving forward when it comes to covering these, or is 8% a significant enough number, and is the issue important enough that that in fact we should keep on covering it the way we have been?
I don't think we shouldn't drive our coverage based on poll numbers. I do think it's good to put it in context, right? So if you are covering this and you're giving either through the repetition of the coverage of something or through just the promo material that you use around it, you have to make sure that you're giving the full context. That yes, there are students doing this, but there are other students who just want to graduate and want to go on with their lives. I think that is important to know. But I don't think that we should ever look at, oh, this is a small thing that's happening, and so therefore it shouldn't be something that we stay on the story. I think a lot of big stories that we cover don't affect thousands of people, and they're still important for us to cover it. So we shouldn't be guided by polls, but it certainly should give us it should be something that we look at and use that to make sure that we are giving a broader spectrum of coverage around it.
Lila, you get the last word here. Do you agree with Dan?
I say this about political polls, and I'll say this about this one as well. Polls are snapshots in time. They're a small, relatively speaking, group of people who respond, and then that response is extrapolated to apply to a large group of people.
That's a good reminder.
So Axios, 8% of respondents have been involved in a protest. That doesn't mean it's 8% of the student body across America. I also think that we're focusing a lot on elite institutions in places where kids are rushing off, or I said kids again, students.
It's a need. I have the same habit.
Are rushing off to make third shift because they have to pay their mortgage or pick their kids up from school. They're not the ones who are in these encampments, by and large. Does that mean their points of view on this don't exist? No, they still exist. But I think that the protest could also represent people who are not able to be or privileged enough to be skipping classes or exams or stopping projects to sit in an encampment. So it's worth covering.
All right, Lila Alphonse, Dan Lothian, thank you both for talking this through.
My pleasure.
Next up, think tanks have always played a big role in Massachusetts politics, like the fiscally progressive Mass Budget and Policy Center or the conservative watchdog Pioneer Institute. But late last year, a new think tank arrived on the scene, the Boston Policy Institute, launched by a pair of longtime Democratic operatives. And this year, they made a big splash with a report that said declining commercial real estate values will pose a big financial problem for the city. That finding sparked an ongoing debate featuring Mayor Michelle Wu and a bunch of other more established parties like the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. It's also raised questions about who is funding the Boston Policy Institute and what the organization's ultimate goals are. I'm joined now by Commonwealth Beacon reporter Gin Dumcius, who recently dug into those questions in a story titled "The Shadowy Think Tank Fighting Boston City Hall." Gin, great to see you as always. So what do we know about the Boston Policy Institute and what don't we know?
Thanks for having me. So a couple of things. We know that, as you mentioned at the top, that these are two Democratic political consultants who've been around politics for quite some time. Maynard has worked in local elections in and around Boston, also in Worcester. And Joe Caiazzo has worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign, Sheldon Whitehouse in Rhode Island. So they've both been around. And what they've set up is a think tank. It's under the IRS designation 501c4, which allows them to essentially not disclose who their donors are. And I obtained a copy of a presentation they were shopping around before the 2023 elections, kind of hoping to set this up and bring that kind of scrutiny, fresh scrutiny to City Hall. And that lack of disclosure of donors was a key selling point in that presentation.
What was the argument in favor of a lack of disclosure?
Well, so when I talked to Maynard for the story, he said the blowback that he had seen from City Hall over their report about office values, to him that justified the secrecy there, and he also touched on something that for Boston City Hall has been known for decades. I mean, going back to the Menino years of mayors sometimes striking out or striking at folks who speak up. Mm-hmm. So that was his argument.
Yeah, can you characterize their politics? You talked about the background of Joe Caiazzo and Greg Maynard. I think they, if I recall correctly, they might have met working on Elizabeth Warren's campaign. I hope I'm getting that right. But how would you characterize their politics? Are they centrist, liberal, progressive? If you had to label them, what would you do?
Well, I kind of let people label themselves. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. I do think it's interesting. They did meet Michelle Wu on that Elizabeth Warren 2012 campaign, which I guess if you were working in Democratic politics in 2012, you probably were working on that campaign or at least involved in some way. And certainly, they've been in and around the same orbit in the year since the 2013 race to succeed Menino that Marty Walsh won. Maynard worked for both, I believe it was Dan Connolly and then John Connolly in the final election. So, in terms of the politics, you can take a look at how they're handling some of the analysis. I mean, in one case, they did ask back a couple of months ago an analyst from the Democrats for Education Reform to take a look at Boston Public Schools and whether it's how it's handling the memorandum of understanding with state education officials. So that might be one indication of where they're coming from.
You and I were on a phone call this week in which the Boston Policy Institute was talking about a new poll that they just did with Social Sphere and John Della Volpe, the pollster, looking at issues facing the city. In that poll, they found that people really like the quality of life in Boston, but feel that on certain issues, the city isn't doing enough to do work that needs to be done. Affordable housing, cost of living, those are two examples. In that same call, the pollster shared some ratings that they'd obtained for Mayor Michelle Wu that suggested that people thought pretty highly of the job that she was doing as mayor. But it turns out, apparently, based on our inability to get more detail on those numbers, that they were released inadvertently. Why might an organization poll something like that, but not put those numbers out there publicly along with all the other data that they put out?
Sure. I mean, it's a very good question. And it's certainly, I think, as we saw that when the materials came out afterwards, that the details of those favorables were not there. It's overall the poll was. There was a lot for the mayor and her administration to like if they were going through all the crosstabs and everything. I think it's one of those things of did they want to focus more on policy versus what could be described as horse race? I'm not sure. Could it be something to do with the designation through the IRS about kind of where the line is about getting involved in electioneering or campaigning? I think that's kind of a mystery at this point. But it did come out. Della Volpe did say in response to a reporter's question, he delved right into it, and I think we all started scribbling very quickly.
Yeah, you and I know both thought that was the most important thing. So just a follow-up question, then we'll have to wrap up. I mean, I found myself wondering when they wouldn't put those numbers out, might the funding for BPI be coming from someone who is fundamentally antagonistic to the mayor or doesn't want to release information that might be seen as boosting her reelection prospects? That being said, there's been no ad hominem attacks on the mayor like you might get with other think tanks that might go after people in a highly personal way. They haven't been doing that with her. But if their information is right, do you think it matters if they have mysterious funding or a fundamentally critical slant vis-a-vis the mayor? If the data is good, is the data therefore able to stand on its own?
Well, I think I've been doing this for 15 plus years, and for me, it's always been more information is a good thing. To know where everybody is coming from. Certainly, the data itself is important, but also, who's presenting the data, I think, is a fair question. Them not disclosing the donors certainly opens up, certainly to themselves up to whispers. I mean, that's been outside City Hall. There's been discussion of exactly, are there potential rivals that are helping this effort? Certainly. There's questions about whether, like, it's as I noted in my story, whether there's any sort of grudge match, because Greg Maynard's wife used to work for Wu when she was a city councilor.
That's right. And then when those numbers were shared and then not fully shared, it just, for me, enhanced the questions that you just raised. So, Gin Dumcius, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Finally tonight. Graduate workers at Boston University are on strike demanding better pay after months of failed negotiations with the school. More than 6 weeks since they first walked off the job. Nikunj Ketan, a member of the BU Grad Workers Union, joins me on where the strike currently stands. Nikunj, thanks for being here. So you are a fifth-year mechanical engineering doctoral student. Can you explain to people what that means in terms of work you do that is not focused specifically on your own studies?
So beyond my own studies, which include research in my lab, me and many of my colleagues also cover teaching. So that can include teaching lectures, holding lab sessions for undergrads, holding office hours for undergrads. We also cover, community building events such as holding conferences and journal clubs and other organizational requests. Anything and everything in between that really makes the university run and operate. We are the cogs in the wheel. We're the cogs in the machine.
I would guess it varies from week to week depending on what you're doing, but could you offer an estimate of weekly, how many hours you spend altogether working?
That is a great question. I think some people would present us as part-time workers and part-time students. But in reality, for most grad workers, we spend more than 40 hours a week working on anything from research to educational requirements to teaching for the university.
And what are you, I know this varies from student to student, grad student to grad student, but what are you paid right now for the work that you do?
Right now, as an engineer, I'm paid about $40,000 a year. And that's on a 12-month stipend. A lot of my colleagues are paid on 9-month stipends, only about $28,000 a year. And there can be variation in between $28,000 and $40,000. But living in Boston, where the annual cost of living is $62,000 a year, for many of us, that's unsustainable. That has placed many of us in a position where we're at risk of being rent burdened or losing on housing, or just not able to afford basic groceries or basic medical requirements.
So to the extent that you can summarize it quickly, and I know that there's a lot to cover here, but what are you seeking from the administration and how close are the union and the administration to forming some sort of deal at this point?
We are seeking some sort of contract or stipend or living wage that will allow us to live and work in the Boston area. And so that includes a living wage based off numbers that can be calculated on what it takes to be not rent burdened in Boston. We're also seeking, basic healthcare benefits, basic transportation benefits, and a number of other coverages and benefits that are essential to our membership. Right now, since we started the strike, the pace of bargaining has picked up. Proposals that the university has made at the table haven't come close to meeting our demands. We're still very far apart on substance. And we've been very disappointed in the university's approach. They've spread a lot of confusion and conflicting information, and they haven't really sought to address the core demands in our proposal. So
I should mention that we did ask the administration if they might be able to provide a guest. They were not able to do that, but they did point us to a public statement that BU had made. And one of the assertions made in that public statement is that the Grad Workers Union has been spreading misinformation, specifically about the impact the strike has been having on students. The statement said, "We have by necessity made curricular and other changes in some of these cases where teachers or assistants are striking. However, contrary to the union's assertions, we will not have people without appropriate training grade our students. Additionally, the union's assertion that we will simply have students grade themselves is a mischaracterization of our recommendation that instructors consider ungrading." I guess the question raised by that is, how disruptive would you say the strike has been to students as it has continued into the end of the school year?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, we have many responsibilities, such as research and teaching, and we've really focused this past semester our strike on teaching, although some have focused on research as well. So, in the early stages of our strike, what the dean there was referring to is, there were emails, for example, sent out by another dean suggesting generative AI could be used to substitute graduate labor. And frankly, that's insulting. Haphazard attempts to implement things like asking students to grade themselves, or that idea of ungrading, which I'm told is a complex pedagogical instrument. That takes time and effort and thought to implement on a level that is, satisfactory. Many of my peers and colleagues have spent a long time developing actual pedagogical instruction for our undergrads. And students paying over $60,000 a year in tuition deserve a real education, not something that they could find online or on ChatGPT.
My last question for you, Nikunj. You said that the two sides are very far apart and the union has been dismayed at what the administration has offered. Will this strike be continuing when school resumes next fall?
We will carry out the strike as long as it takes for us to win a fair and reasonable contract under which we can live in the city of Boston, live and work in the city of Boston.
Okay, Nikunj Khaitan, thank you for being here and talking this through. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Adam.
That is it for tonight. Come back next week, and thanks for watching.
That is just